So,
Go live.
Hey everyone, we're live. We're going to
Wait.
officially roll the intro in a little bit when we have more people join. But yeah, welcome to the Dash podcast. I see, like we were talking about, like what people are wearing and everything, and Sven is the one person who has it all perfect. Honestly, as far as my choices of dress, all my Dash shirts are in the wash right now because, and that's not a joke, it's true. They're all in the wash right now because I'm going to, on Sunday, right, 2 days, go to some conference. I just want to make sure everything is ready for official representation. But since we're doing an ETHDam wrap up, I do have my ETHDam shirt on. So
Wait.
that's close
Good.
enough from
Very
last year
fitting.
at least. Yes. And then we have the Space Invader sweater from Andreas over there.
The home knitted shirt from the wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm out of uniform.
It kind of looks like that, but it's on brand from colors standpoints at least. Yeah. So obviously a lot of this stuff, we would have preferred, to be immediately like following when the event is still super fresh in everyone's minds, but I think it kind of works out a little bit better this way because we've had some time to actually consider implications and everything, and also it's been a crazy news week, which I'm sure brings a whole lot of extra fun stuff to the table. So this will be a fun show. I think we have a few people watching. I think it's probably a good time to roll the intro and get going on this. All right, guys. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey everyone, officially now, welcome to the Dash Podcast, episode 214, which means I've been doing 204. This used to be a weekly show for the first about 100 episodes on the Dash News channel back in the day. And then after that, I moved it to this channel, and it was every 2 weeks for a while. And now it's like roughly every month, just to make sure, because it ended up being having too many of these podcasts for the sake of the podcast and not because there was something cool to highlight. But still, 214, it's a minimum of 214 weeks that I've been doing this, but probably, what is it, 6 or 7 years straight been doing the Dash podcast, which is a long time.
Amen.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Dash is a old
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
Been around for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it the sort of Three Musketeer label initially, or
Yeah, the Three Amigos, I think.
Amigos? Yeah, sorry, you're right. Not Musketeers. Amigos.
Yeah, and to give the credit, I guess where credit's due, the inspiration to start a podcast came from Brian, aka Mastermind, because I was on an episode of Free Talk Live and some Monero troll started calling in, and then he called in too, and he kind of liked the experience. He's like, "Oh, we should do a podcast," and then there we go. And then for a while, after it was just myself and Mark Mason, and after the whole Dash News thing went down, and I decided to start this channel and to do it. It was Spencer, aka Kodaks, who helped me the first few episodes, especially. And so he's very busy with other things in life, but he still does actively develop on Dash projects today. So I'm very, very grateful to him for that too. So yeah, all the above is very, very nice. And this is the first, but it wasn't the only specifically Dash coin focused thing on this channel, because last year I did a 12-month, 12-episode Zcash podcast that was funded by the Zcash Grants Committee. And so I did the Zcash one and the Dash one. And it's kind of it might be some theme we end up talking about when we talk about the Dash Treasury and things like that. But this media channel platform, whatever, is like, I guess you could say self-funded, like independently funded. It's not, the Treasury money doesn't touch this at all. And, it's good to have a exogenous forms of sustainable revenue, I guess, as it were, for things like this. But anyway, happy to be here. Happy to have you guys on here. Andreas from CrowdNode. I guess you're the co-founder of CrowdNode
Yes, one of the 4 co-founders of CrowdNode.
and the main, and I would consider the main person because I just see you popping in and doing things a lot more. But yeah,
Safe to say that, I think.
and
But yeah,
yeah,
and Sven.
yeah, of the DIF, the Dash
Yeah.
Investment Foundation. Also,
That's
not
right.
the only one, but the main one as far as you could sort of see pop in.
Right.
So
We have a bit of a European representation today, which
yeah,
is fitting because the event we wanted to
Awesome.
talk about was in Europe,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Of course. Real quick, I have gotten feedback that my sound is a little on the low side, so just checking that out. But really, this is annoying. Okay, well, apparently I was using not my good microphone, so
Oh,
now hopefully it is the good microphone. Something happens anyway. Don't mind me. It should hopefully be good now. But anyway, right into stuff. So I've been to ETHDam as a speaker second year or as an attendee at all, 2 years in a row. It was the last year, and I'm very close with the organizers. They're great people. And then I thought I needed to come back this year, and then I thought might as well try to get some other people to come and have like a little event. So yeah, so you guys came and joined, and so before I just talk about
Yeah.
all my stuff, would you guys just what was your impression?
Yeah, maybe I start because I don't actually have that much time. I may have to leave in like
Yeah,
20 minutes or so. Um, for me, it was a great opportunity to actually get back into sort of the live event space. There haven't been so many real life crypto events near where I live recently. And when this thing popped up, Amsterdam is not too far from where I live. I can take a
yeah,
train there. And I heard that Joel is going to be speaking there. I said, I'm going. And for me, it was a good opportunity to connect with the crowd and with the
yeah,
community there to potentially scope around a little bit for um, contacts that might be useful for the diff in some way. I'm not uh, necessarily saying we're not really looking for immediate investment targets at this point, with our liquidity is a bit suffering from the low dash price. But it's always good to have a pipeline, right? And so and also just to get an idea of what's out there, what are people working on, and I did make a few really good contacts in that regard. And of course, it was also very interesting to see what's being done on the privacy front in general. So, Dash is by many seen as a privacy coin, which it may, it's not like Monero or Zcash, but we do have that label. We're always kind of lumped in with these guys. And I know that privacy is dear to the heart of many in the Dash community. So it's also good to see what other privacy-minded folks are up to and what the sentiment is. And so it was for me interesting to learn about this Mika thing that
yeah,
Andreas might be talking about a bit more. That is a big new regulation that's about to hit all the EU countries, and it will have a pretty severe impact on how crypto is being handled. Um, yeah, and so it was a 3 days of good fun, good learnings, and interesting new contacts.
absolutely. Yeah, and especially I should mention the conference is called ETHDam because it ended up being, I think this was the second ETHDam. It was like ever. So because it sort of focused a lot more on the Ethereum community,
Right.
and for even last year, it started to become like it started to become a little bit less ETH centric, even from the very beginning, because obviously Justin Bonds, who's runs Cyber Capital, and he's one of the the key figures in the organizing of the event, is a big critic of Ethereum's current scaling roadmap. And
Right.
so next year it may be rebranded to ETHDam or something, which I would like.
Oh,
But
cool.
the point is, the first ETHDam did focus on privacy to a certain extent, with building privacy tools, having like the Railgun folks over there who do like zero knowledge privacy and all that kind of stuff, as well as because Tornado Cash it didn't get taken down. It's still, the contract's still running. People are still using it, etc. But the founders got arrested, starting with Alexei Pertsev last year, and he made a surprise appearance after being released, like at the last year conference, and said a few words on stage, and then his lawyer said a bunch of things. He was here for this one as well. I didn't see him, but I hear he was up at the top watching my talk and stuff. I thought I heard he liked my talk, but I guess the whole like, oh, live on use crypto stuff, I'm like, he's probably got bigger problems right now to deal with, unfortunately. But the theme of both of these was privacy. I think they really doubled down on privacy and sovereignty this time.
Yeah, and it was good to see your talk also. And you didn't only have one talk, right? You were on multiple sessions, Joel. You had a panel discussion, and you were a moderator in some other talks. So, and it was for me also the first time to meet you in person. It's always nice. And also I met Andreas. Of course, CrowdNote is one of our portfolio companies. And then there was also Edge Wallet with Paul Puey, their CEO and founder, which is also one of our portfolio companies. So it was a good opportunity for me to catch up with those two and see what they're up to, how the business is going.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always, I mean, I have known Andreas for a while. We met and hung out at the Dash convention in 2019 in Zurich, and also, of course, the Dashtoberfest after party. That was a good time. There's only so much I remember about that night, though, for obvious reasons. But yes, it's definitely great. And one thing's for sure, I do think it's very valuable to have in-person meetings and conferences with people. There's something. In fact, Paul from Edge, who's also a very good friend of mine, he has this weird thing with his company where it was a hard line. Now he's had to sort of bend for certain things, but everyone he hires has to work in the office in San Diego. He just does not do remote work. Or now he has a couple people that were in person and just said, look, I'm either going to quit this job or you're going to let me work remote. And so they kind of like, So, well, I don't necessarily agree with that way of running a business. It's not my business, but it does kind of highlight the fact that like when you do actually meet in person, I feel like you get a lot of like real work done in some good ways, where you start to really brainstorm things. And so there you go.
I had a good sit down with him. He gave me a little update of how things are going at Edge, and it's much better than trying to shoot emails back and forth. And this human face-to-face connection is invaluable. After all, despite all this modern technology. So.
Yeah, even despite like Zoom calls and things, like even though you can get a lot closer via that, it's still a lot better.
We can't hug each other on a Zoom call, right, guys? I really enjoyed the manhandling.
The manhandling part was definitely very good. So obviously, probably Sven first because of the time constraints, but what were some of your takeaways from the conference? Like some things as far as like, oh, I didn't realize that this was so popular, or that was really interesting there, or like I learned a lot about this part of the industry from this person in particular I talked to. Like, what are some of your big takeaways from that?
I think for me it was interesting to see what the range of what people define as privacy, and to the extent to which they will go to pursue a certain ideal. I mean, there's on one hand maybe people who don't necessarily want somebody at MasterCard headquarters to be able to pull out a record and compile a personality profile based on their spending habits. And then there are other people who, for whom privacy basically is a euphemism for dissolve all governments and like do your own thing and anti-government, anti-everything. And it was quite interesting to see that range of ideas and reactions there. And then specifically, I remember this. Amir, right? Was this
Amir Taki, yeah.
Yeah, Amir Taki, right? He was on stage talking, and it's to me, I mean, I admire him for his enthusiasm and his passion that he brings. Doesn't necessarily speak out of my heart. I can't really fully identify with all his ideals and goals. But that certainly, it was kind of on the one extreme end of the spectrum, and then on the other end you have people that just kind of care about having the ability of spending a digital equivalent of cash on everyday transactions, and like I said, not necessarily having somebody to watch over their shoulders and be able to bombard them with advertising or stuff like that. In fact, I saw a prototype of a wallet, a spending cash type wallet, which reminded me a lot of the Dash wallet. Even actually, if you see that prototype, it looks very similar to the Dash mobile wallet, and it's based on some Ethereum token. So to see that range and the different facets that people associate with the word privacy was interesting to me. On the more specific topics, I already touched on this Mika topic that especially here in Europe is is going to touch all of us in some way or another. To try and learn more about what that may mean, it's still not fully clear to me, to be honest. But there were some interesting talks on that one. There was a lawyer there that I listened to that tried to explain it. So yeah, that was kind of my main impression. And we shouldn't forget there was a hackathon also, right?
Yes.
There was a lot of people kind of not really going to the talks and listening, but sitting in this room upstairs and just hacking away for 3 days and actually sleeping in the auditorium overnight. And then at the third day, they were presenting their projects, and there were some very interesting things there too. Like that wallet I mentioned was one of them, but there were some others that look really promising. I mean, how much can you do in 3 days? But to see the enthusiasm in the community, the spirit of just doing something, not because you get paid for it, not because there is a big treasury that pays out the big bucks to pay for your developer salary, but just hacking things together because you have an idea and you just want to make it work. And to see so many people in a room to kind of share that energy and this enthusiasm to create something just because it's cool, for the sake of creating things, is something that I hope we can bring back to Dash in a bigger form, so that not everybody just sits around and says, "Hey, what's DCG doing?"
Yeah. Well, that's exactly, that sort of speed runs the whole conversation, because there's a lot of places that could go by the end. But definitely the hackathon build thing is very important. I do think that the delivery of Evolution launching on mainnet will solve a big mistrust from investors kind of issue for just, oh, you haven't delivered this thing that's been promised for a long time. That solves that.
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing it does. the third biggest thing it does is what it does, in my opinion. The second biggest thing that it does is it gets people interested in Dash and building. There's this one fellow, in fact, I will actually find... I'll actually find the tweet where he posted it. But this one fellow, I did some like vague tweet about what's his name? About basically me personally not deciding to come full time back into Dash until whoever like the team was responsible for, I guess, the broken promises, for lack of a better way of saying it, until they were not like involved actively anymore. And then one person started to comment on it, some developer person, and I'll throw that up on the screen there. He posted, he found like the dashdevs.org, which is an outdated site, as I should say. But he said with the Dash architecture, with the master node and tender Dash and 8 drive and all this stuff, he said, wow, Dash has come a long way. And he kind of knew about Dash in 2019, I believe, and had not investigated it very much since then. But now he's like excited to, he's a developer, he's excited to start trying to build on stuff. And so that's the big thing, is when we have people coming back into Dash who want to build, excited, like, oh, I haven't played with this thing yet, let me see what I could do on it. Like that's going to be very cool.
Right. Yeah, if I may just throw in an example, I'm just thinking of a conversation I had with somebody there who was building a mobile. Let me explain it. So they put up mobile towers, cell phone towers, in underserved areas. That could be third world countries, Tanzania, some place like that. It could also be rural areas in the US. Areas that typically not served by the big telcos because it's too remote, too expensive for them. And how do they pay for these? They pay through a crowdfunding model. So anyone can pitch in. Of course, it would be first of all probably the people who live there, but it could also be anyone, anywhere in the world, could participate in funding one of these cell phone towers and enable a community somewhere to participate in digital life. And they use a tokenized system, or is backed by a blockchain, to make it fully transparent, so that you as an investor can see that yes, my money did in fact go to that community and paid for this piece of technology. And of course, then the investors get paid back from usage fees from the people who actually use these mobile networks and pay for usage, and then that's how investors make a return. I wish we could build something like that based on Dash. Of course, they are building this on an Ethereum token now, and there's no way I can convince them to change that and switch to Dash platform once it's available. But it's ideas like that are really inspiring. They told me about a village in Africa where they are already running a live trial phase, and you have a fisher village where people used to fish during the week, and then the wholesaler comes by once a week and picks up their catch. Half of it is already rotten by then because they were not able to notify anyone when they make a big catch on Monday and the dealer is only coming by on Friday. Now they can call a guy and can say, hey, we have a really big catch, come over, pick it up. They make more money. They can take part in learn new languages, Duolingo, stuff like that. Can communicate with people in China that actually ended up being interested in a certain type of fish. I forgot, you told me what type of fish it was, but now they're selling that type of fish that's for some reason particularly popular in China directly to China. And why? Because they've been connected through this mobile network, which they didn't have before. I mean, these are awesome stories. I love that stuff. And I wish we as Dash, or also as the diff, could enable these sort of business models, right? And if you imagine also how many transactions that creates on that blockchain, on the network, the whole ecosystem benefits from it. So these are the sort of things I took away from the conference, and kind of gets my mind going into what could we do to make Dash and the Dash platform as successful, to enable use cases like that really touch people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I should kind of mention with all the use case stuff. And people are going to, why I'm in crypto, obviously why I got into crypto was financial sovereignty, digital cash, and all that. But the big reason why I want this to be like my career, my life kind of, is because we're redoing everything. The entire way the world has been, the structure of the world is just going to be completely different and on decentralized rails. And I really care about that. Now, talking about that though, I think a lot of the early days of crypto, there was a lot of hubris, like a lot of like, oh, everything's Bitcoin's going to be this, Bitcoin's going to be that. And then every other project says, we're going to be the chain that does everything. And everyone's just kind of doing this. It's kind of like every company, every startup being like, we're just going to be the Amazon of the future, where we just sell everything and run web hosting and even do healthcare like Amazon's doing now. Like they just do everything. Maybe at some point you have to just be a company, or in this case, a decentralized network that does some things very well and does it. And if you do end up being the dominant network that everyone uses for everything, okay, that's cool too. But let's start building cool things. So like we don't have to have every single application be on our network specifically, at least not right away. We can just pick a few things that really work, make sure they solve problems for real people, and then just keep growing from there.
Sure.
That's a very, very valid point, Joe, because, roaming the rooms and talking to people, I still got a feeling after all these years in crypto that the good business cases, the winning use cases are still not there in, excess. Just touching, I think 3 out of the 10 finalists in the hackathon, they all went with a password manager solution.
Yeah, that's right.
And I do really want to get back to Sven. You said the scale of privacy, but also just touch the scale of what does decentralization mean in the minds of the participants of the conference, right? Because I'm not sure which one actually won, but one of these password managers, which is, I like the idea of a password manager on chain, but it was built on an L2, and it was built on a centralized L2. And the argument for putting it there was it's cheaper. But of course, it's cheaper right now because that centralized L2 is a for-profit entity, and they're right now burning VC money like hell, right? When they run out of VC money, will that L2 then increase the prices? Most likely. So you're running for something that's not decentralized, at least in my opinion. And it's cheaper now, but will it be in the future? Most likely not. Right. So there's, but it seemed to be a killer use case, a password manager, and I for one would think that's an obvious one to do with Evo once it gets out, and an easy one potentially even with a browser extension and maybe even in a desktop app as well, and we can do it on a real decentralized platform where it's not some centralized for-profit entity controlling the chain that we're doing it on, right? And just decentralization, right? Actually met some people at the conference that just for the sake of something being on an L2 instead of an L1 believed that was decentral. And I was like, no, that's not decentral, guys. It's got nothing to do with decentral or decentralization, right? It's the same for-profit company running it, and all the servers and all the bridges and all the aggregators. That's not decentralized, but it's not the L1. Ergo, decentralized. No, stop.
Yeah, but that's how Binance was ahead. Binance was ahead on a lot of things because Binance came with the Dino, as I call it, decentralized in-name only. like chain. Like no, I'm not throwing shade at Binance Smart Chain or whatever, but it's clearly an extension of the Binance company that
Yep.
just is a DEX, decentralized, whatever. And they were just sort of smart to do it before Coinbase did Base. And I don't know, is there going to be, is Kraken going to have the Kraken L2 now? And like, who knows?
Possibly. Yeah,
Guys, I gotta apologize, but I gotta go,
already, Sven.
unfortunately.
No.
So, but it was good seeing you guys here,
Yeah.
and everybody watching. I hope you're enjoying the show, and catch you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. And everyone seems to be running for those L2s, obviously for profit. And I really think that's a shame, because to me, as a contrary to what many of the participants at the conference actually just went about sort of believing that DeFi is when it's just not the banks doing it. I'm like, no, it takes much more. Truly decentralized solutions is what we really need. So the scale, Sven opened it about privacy, and I agree. There were the more extreme views, and then there's the more, I just need my transactions, what do I know, obfuscated, so it's not obvious what I'm doing, and everyone in between. But also the perception of what decentralized and decentralization really is was put to the test, and was actually quite amusing or horrifying to hear what people believe to be decentralized solutions.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we have such a varied spate of opinions on different aspects of crypto, right? As far as like what really matters, and like it's funny because everyone. This is why I really like exiting the Dash bubble, for example, or any bubble. Is on the other side you have a whole bunch of different opinions, and so for example, I think that like Dash has the user experience and the robust decentralized structure that a lot of like is just not around. Modern crypto is just very corporate. A lot of those ways, it doesn't have those things. And if you dip on the other side of things, people looking out was probably like, wait, you guys are still using this weird coin join thing for your privacy? And then also like, what do you mean you don't have tokens or NFTs, or you can't build anything? So it's like, it's great to see like, oh man, that guy's a savage. Oh man, that guy's a savage. It's like kind of funny to see both sides.
It is, and that's what I really enjoyed about the conference. Getting sort of gauging the temperature not only on MiCA, the EU requirements. I'm sure we're going to touch that, but sort of gauging the overall temperature on how's crypto doing. Particularly interesting to hear. You mentioned Justin earlier, right? His opinion around Bitcoin lost its scaling wars years ago, like 2014 or maybe 15 or something, right? ETH is potentially on the verge of losing a scaling war as well, and the layer 2 solutions are not solving it, probably even making it worse, right? And then we have Solana that might be, the next up and coming. At least it has a lot of scaling potential on the L1. But honestly, if we just put that aside, Bitcoin is useless. Let's assume that Ethereum doesn't get its momentum back on scaling L1, and we look at and this is what I sat on the airplane on the way home thinking about this. If we sort of scrape away all the L2s, especially all the for-profit ones, especially not just on the Ethereum or Ethereum side chains, right? If we scrape away all the centralized L2s and tokens, and then look at a sort of fresh top 100 coin list, we can then also seriously look at who has something that seems like there's a privacy element to it, whether if it's just CoinJoin or something even better. And then if we scrape away the coins that are not DAOs, then Dash is in a pretty good position to, when Evo is fixed, be the next really good shit, decentralized in the right way. I'm not sure whether we should talk about Evo as a, I don't know, L1 extension, or is it L and L1.
An
It's
alt L,
definitely
I
not.
would say.
Yeah, it's definitely not an L2, right? And then we're back to getting the adoption, which I'm seeing, finding the use cases. But Dash has a lot of potential to sort of regain its not only market cap but market usage because of all those scaling issues and scaling wars and for-profit L2 tokens and all that, which is not even decentralized.
For sure. And I think it's very important to note just how there's there's definitely a lot of catching up to do for sure. But there's something to be said for that foundation. And I think that in my opinion, like the Dash of the past was one of the best cryptos out there for sure, as probably the best, whatever. It's hard to quantify that. But and it just was like, well, if only we just get the word out more. And then we found some, like, I guess, governance and ecosystem problems that, held back development and other stuff like that. And we moved past a lot of that stuff. And in some technological places, I think we followed behind. In other ways, we're still like ahead of the curve because no one else is competing in that kind of area before. And so, like, I did ask some very hard questions of myself over the last few years of like, what do I do with my life? Like, as far as I do care about, I do want to be working in crypto and full time and all this kind of stuff. But I also don't want to just run a podcast and be successful at that and just like be a spectator. Like, I want to be active in this. I don't just want to talk about stuff that happens, which I do, which is what we're doing now. But like, I don't want that to be all I do. And so it's just the same, like, it's like a logical, flow chart of if this, then that. And in 2016, when I stopped using Bitcoin largely and started using Dash instead, got into Dash in the first place, I did that flow chart of, what is the only thing I could reasonably live off of that's not Bitcoin today? And Dash was the top of the list as far as like, Ethereum wasn't. I'm glad I didn't use that, by the way. But then like Litecoin was abandoned at the time. I mean, Litecoin is pretty useful today, but like then it was abandoned. And then it's just like Dash was the top one. There was no Bitcoin Cash, anything. And so I reevaluated that, I would say last year mostly, where I'm just like, what am I going to start put? Because, I also started doing some work for Zcash and getting deep into that ecosystem and all this. And just kind of like looking about like the broad spectrum of things. Where is the potential? And there's nothing perfect, but like everything has, like, the top coins have scaling issues for sure. And then a lot of the other ones have decentralization issues, especially new cryptos are just, and it is an issue. It's not just, well, I would prefer this. It's like, no, it will be an existential problem in the future.
Yes.
And then eventually it's just like, okay, well, what about, these other, eventually it's just like, I kind of end up back at the same spot where I'm just like, well, it's not so much, oh, Dash is the only thing that could work out. Well, I'm obviously not at this point, but this is where I see the greatest potential to do everything. And all these projects that are alternatives that I think could be very useful in the future, I see a lot of dead ends in the future, right? As far as like Bitcoin Cash, like I don't want to anger those people. I don't see it winning out long term because of some structural issues that just have not been solved and I could be wrong, and time will show if I am wrong. But I see some issues. I don't think Ethereum or the L2 ecosystem. I don't trust Solana either. There's a bunch of things, and then every problem I have with Dash, I think we can fix in the next year or two. So that's kind of where I miss the potential.
It's the potential, and it's a really good feeling, actually. But it then just hurts to see Dash sort of down the list because we have all these centralized coins and tokens and non-DAOs and all that taking up the VC money space on the list, right? But for the technology and for the better part of having an element of privacy and for true decentralization, and then soon a platform where we can build dApps and actually build winning use cases. I agree. Then scaling will be a luxury problem to solve. I'm not sure if the numbers are still like between 50 and 100 transactions per second on the Dash chain, right? But that obviously needs to go up once we catch. Yeah, dramatically, right? It's 1,000 for Ethereum, and they have totally different volume. So it's I think that needs to be fixed. But we could also start to sort of improve the privacy protocols, or even the staking native staking protocols, right? And not that I want CrowdNode to go out of business, but I want it to be far easier for people to stake and stake trustlessly, right? Non-custodial solutions to that. So even though we have a solution, it's not that elegant, right? I think people who have tried it knows this, but we definitely value that we have it and we want to make it better. But could things, be done much better protocol-wise? As a Dash enthusiast, I welcome that, and I hope that CrowdNode will still be sort of the matchmaking solution, or bridging some technical gap to make it easy. But the overarching smile on my face after the conference is that I really feel that Dash still has great potential after visiting a conference where wonderful people have wonderful ideas and are doing really great, but they're missing the essential decentralization and privacy points that we actually address.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a couple of, I guess the two main themes on this thing are like the staking / nodes and the privacy parts. So let's start with the staking type thing. So what did you learn about CrowdNode and the way it operates today and its future over the weekend and past, that basically what's changed with CrowdNode, what will be changing in the future? Do you know?
Yeah, so one of my primary goals of going to the conference was to gauge the temperature on MiCA, so the EU compliance law that's going in action. How are other companies dealing with it? Is there anything to be worried about? How should we deal with it? So I learned a lot around the atmosphere around how to tackle MiCA, and I think we're a European company. We're registered in Denmark, which is part of the EU, and regardless of where we would incorporate, this is sort of, I don't know, I forgot the sort of jurisdictional word, but it's globally. So whomever is serving crypto customers that live within EU would need to be compliant with the MiCA law, or not do business with EU citizens. So that obviously includes us, right? So this is touching everyone, and it's touching everyone as far as one of the lawyers were concerned at the conference. So regardless of you doing custodial services or non-custodial services, as long as you're servicing private citizens in the EU, you need a MiCA license. And I think I mentioned it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do KYC on your customers. If the business case is well understood, there's a lot of good elements in MiCA that could sort of exempt, let's be frank, CrowdNode from having to do KYC. And I think, especially US people from the US, or businesses in the US, they like raise an eyebrow, really? But yeah, remember that, unlike the SEC in the US, they're like doing what they think is right and the best for how to govern crypto. In EU, the MiCA is actually written together with crypto businesses, and it's really seen as a positive stepping stone towards just knowing what you're allowed to do, and be able to operate within a known rule set, something we haven't really had before, and that gives a lot of comfort as well in terms of with a license. I can see CrowdNode doing what we're doing today for several years. But if we are eventually forced into doing KYC, I think we might start to look at options of what possibly could we tokenize something instead? Because issuing a token, you could say an L2 on Dash, maybe even, if that becomes possible with Evo or Arbitrum or another network to do that on, a staked Dash might not be out of the question, because we can't really control who buys a token, but we can we could do something like that. But let's see. We need to start talking to the Danish FSA again and see how they view our business. But what I really learned at the conference is that we're probably some of the businesses that seem to be taking this more serious than others. A lot in the conference just like, okay, so if you're not running away with people's funds and you're not doing anything that's obviously illegal, then you're good. And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. We're doing much better than that. But that was sort of the atmosphere, and I'm thinking, wow, okay, we're way ahead of that in CrowdNode. But a lot of the businesses and a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the ideas of European initiatives and companies were like, yeah. And I'm thinking, wow, that's maybe too laissez-faire, right? So I think we're in a good place, and again, that put a smile on my face as well. That not only do I think that Dash is actually doing quite well, especially after when Evo, but CrowdNode is also on top of things, and we have been running a business model that cannot be used to money launder money since we launched, right? And that's 6 years ago, almost now. So that's also very comfortable and reassuring.
Yeah,
We need to do something, right?
Yeah, so the laundering thing is especially interesting because it's sort of a very recent fiat concept, because it was just money is the way it was before, right? And then now it's like, well, privacy. And so like I actually did a tweet a few months ago saying that money laundering is what they say when the poor people or poorly connected people try to achieve financial privacy. Because if you're at the top echelon, which I mean obviously it's not 100% true there, and as much as I don't agree with money laundering as a concept that the government should be involved with, what they're referring to often means if you have like a theft or some other fraud, it's the explicit attempt to conceal the theft or the fraud. And in my opinion, where I guess my disagreement comes with the common definitions and all that, is I don't think the concealment should be a crime at all. I think the crime,
it's a victimless crime, the concealment. Yes. Right? So, but the actual crime should be investigated. Who and what was stolen initially, or I totally agree. The money laundering, victimless crime afterwards, that's just trying to patch something that that went wrong in the first place. But
yes, but yeah, that's a good. It's good to be in that position, and there's a very interesting duality to being in the crypto world where I kind of think that everyone in crypto should almost be like two sides, because on the one hand, if you're existing in a space that has regulations and governments and stuff like that, you have to be fully compliant or you will get destroyed financially. You'll go to prison, whatever. You have to be very careful on that. On the other side, what we're building, by definition, all of crypto, if we're doing things right, is something that is outside of the current structure, and the current structure is, by definition, should be very openly hostile to something like that. But it's like they just don't know yet that they're going to have to deal with that as the reality in a few years, that they're just going to have to adjust to this new decentralized reality. And so I think we have to build technology and networks and things like that in a way that can be resistant, in a way that can be resistant to state attack. At the same time as we have to be very careful on our personal selves and our personal businesses to make sure we're not afoul of that. And I think a lot of the crypto world sort of merges the worst parts of both in a way, where they're they build fragile things that can be attacked and taken down. Like, oh, decentralization later, and then they move too fast, so they're in a regulatory gray area too, where they could get shut down, and they're like, oh no, we got shut down, and then you end up having these problems. Like just today, the Phoenix wallet, which is a French-based company, announced that they're taking their app out of U.S. app stores because they're a Lightning wallet, a Lightning service provider, and it's because according to the U.S. regulations, they're considered a money services business, like a money transmitter, and they need to get a license for that and KYC their users, and it's what Lightning users call a non-custodial wallet, even though Lightning is arguable it can never be non-custodial, but whatever. So they're pulling out of the U.S. because, they were operating something that for a long time, a lot of people, such as myself, said was not perfectly legal according to U.S. law. But it just...
How do they differentiate from any other non-custodial wallet?
So, this is where it gets dark, because sometimes I think there's like a 10% chance, maybe I'm being naive, I think there's a 10% chance that non-custodial wallet providers in the US will be targeted. But the 90% thing, where I thought there was a 90% chance that Phoenix would be targeted eventually, and I guess I was right, because if I am a non-custodial wallet, I hold private keys, the app holds my own private keys, and the software just connects to some nodes that then just broadcast the transaction to the network. And if something happens, for example, they shut down, I can put those same private keys into a different wallet. Or if the wallet allows, I can choose my own node or choose a different one to connect to, and it just works. Whereas with Phoenix and these Lightning service providers, first off, I have money in a multi-sig channel with the company. So even though there's rules on the Lightning Network that govern who can claim how much of the money in that pot, but it's still on-chain. Myself and Async, the Phoenix parent company, share custody over these funds. In order to send to, say, you, if you also are a Phoenix user, I want to send to you, I allocate some of the money between me and Async to them, and their money that they have with someone else like you, they move some of that over to your pocket. So they're not just helping me send data, they are moving their own money on my behalf to the end recipient. So that's where the money transmission thing comes in. And so but the point is, that's kind of that middle ground of regulatorily ambiguous, but also not super decentralized, because now Phoenix users cannot operate in the US. And that's what I'm criticizing, sort of. That's why I think we need to be further on both ends of the spectrum at the same time.
Yeah, ahead of the curve is actually what I'm thinking here. So we can only speculate on how it will actually be governed, the MiCA. But for what it says, even though you're a non-custodial wallet provider, you should have a MiCA license if you want to serve EU citizens. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do KYC on your customers, but as a company, you need a license. I think for some practical purposes, you could probably compare it to getting a New York license, Bitcoin, or what's it called, Joe?
What is it?
The New York license.
Bit license.
Bit license, right? And I would actually think that Dash should push to get ahead of all of these regulatory licenses and just get a MiCA license, or we can get a MiCA license, and then sort of that would allow some sort of white labeling of Dash in the ecosystem in EU. And someone should go ahead and get a bit license in New York to just make sure that the gates are open towards businesses that want to work with Dash, and not wait it out or what do we need it for, but just step into the light and get the licenses. That doesn't prevent us from, I think, working on enhancing privacy. I like the Vitalik, Mr. Ethereum, right? He's pushing the slogan "privacy is normal," and I think we're we're going to see more and more crypto endeavors going towards privacy, not just Zcash or God forbid it, Monero, right? But also everywhere, honestly, right? That's privacy will be an element in everything, and therefore getting the licenses might not be an issue just because Dash is also touching privacy. Because if everyone is talking privacy and touching on it, why should that then prevent us from getting a license? So just stepping into the light and getting the regulatory blue stamps, I think that's really important. But it will cost a lot of money, obviously, and probably be difficult. But I think we should do it.
What's his name? Hilawi commented, and he's just asking, like, how much are we talking for a Mika license in the EU, for example?
Yeah, nobody's willing to answer that.
Estimates.
Estimates. I have no idea. My guess is it's somewhere between 50 and 100,000 euro, and a course of 2 to 4 to 6 months to get it and be done with it. But a lot of it is probably something we could do ourselves instead of having lawyers work out. I think lawyers would want to do this for us, but obviously they are just consultants wearing suits, following a different code set than normal people, right? But they're probably the most expensive part of all of it. I think the license itself is cheap. But it's the process of getting it. But yeah, I'm trying to work out what we can get it for using Danish help. Because we're so small that it actually has to come out of the Danish FSA. We're not big enough to be part of the centralized process around Mika in EU.
Yeah. So, in order to continue, let's just be like as specific as we can, I guess, to wrap this part up. In order to continue operating the way it does, CrowdNode would need the Mika license, right? The Mika license. Is that correct? Or is it yes, but then there would need to be a change in the way it operates as well?
So I'm assuming we need a Mika license to continue working the way we are today. Yes. But it's not set in stone. But that's my assumption. That's my working hypothesis right now. And no one has been able to say, no, you don't need it. But a lot of people have said, we're not sure. Yeah, but probably, yeah. And since Mika doesn't equal KYC necessarily, I'm not afraid of at least opening the dialogue again with the Danish FSA. I think that's the only viable approach. The alternative would be that we ignore it, we sort of do a duck and cover, and then one day someone's knocking at my door and, hey, dude, Andreas from CrowdNode, yeah, you need to shut down CrowdNode immediately, right? Something like that. That would be far worse than just having an open dialogue and I don't necessarily see evil everywhere in the Danish FSA. Bear in mind they did authorize us to operate without KYC for now, saying that as long as all your members are sending from one address and receiving back to that address, it's impossible to do something that's money laundering wise an issue. So continue doing that and don't do KYC. But Mika is a different beast altogether. But I'm hoping that the conclusion could be the same end of it. And if not, then more trustless, more non-custodial, a better solution to that. Hopefully much like we have the click to stake natively in the Dash wallet today, how about we build the click to stake non-custodial in the wallet, right? That should at least help on the endeavors as well.
Yeah, with of course the make sure my microphone's close. With of course the understanding that that's technically challenging because, and I actually talked to a bunch of people about this sort of subject over many years, because with a proof of stake system, which Dash is not, but there's elements similar to that. It's still like, for example, Ethereum has like a 32 ETH minimum to stake, which is a lot of money. That's more than a masternode, right? And so, and you have to have it that way because, first of all, if you have too many validators that are too, it just doesn't make sense if you have to spend a lot of money running each of these nodes. So it's not about that, but also in order for the blockchain, this is what Dr. Tapp explained to me one time, that if you had to check for the blockchain in order just to query all the addresses to see if they're staking on a constant level to give them money, you'd have to have a minimum threshold of a certain amount in order to not overwhelm the system on a technical level, which is why no proof of stake system just lets you stake kind of thing. Like there's always some, either a minimum or something like a delegated proof of stake system, like in EOS and Steam and all those kinds of things. Or I know Decred has a ticketing system where everyone can stake, but then you just get a ticket. So like your vote comes up only a certain amount. So it's kind of like a quorum almost. And so there's a bunch of different ways of getting around that. But at some point, I think that you do need so because of that, the master structure for a network topology standpoint is the way it has to be. Not 100% has to be, but it's optimal for the network, which is why we're paying people. People shouldn't get paid for doing nothing. Otherwise, your network collapses. But
exactly,
we do have to have a better way of people allocating the capital and receiving rewards for the capital allocation part of things. And that's kind of where we're at. I hope to talk to some DCG people about some ideas that they have on that.
Yeah. So technically, we're capable of doing it today. And the first version that went on testnet, the trustless that we did, had more than twice the number of steps that's in there today. And that was actually a solution where the funds didn't need to sort of go into custodial management from our side before returning to a non-custodial structure. But it takes more steps, and it requires that you are somewhat of a knowledgeable Dash user. You need to know how to use Dash Core, or at least just follow a guide. And some things that, if you're not knowledgeable around what you're doing, could be quite uncomfortable doing. So having a native integration would be the next good thing, and then opening up to do it completely non-custodial. But we could also, talk to DCG and then ideally improve the staking, the fractional staking on sort of a protocol level. And both Pasta and Quantum have ideas around this and talked about it on occasions. And for what it's worth, that might be good to spend some time on. Personally, I would rather, obviously, from a CrowdNode perspective, see the non-custodial and fully automated integration going into the Dash Mobile wallet and maybe even Ethereum wallet, or who knows, Edge wallet, right? But wallets natively making it easy to stake completely trustlessly, and then have DCG focus on honestly sending the devs to conferences or developing dApps, the winning use cases, or improving privacy. But obviously, if there is some good solutions to improving how staking can be done natively protocol level, from a Dash perspective, that makes sense, right? Have you tried to stake, run a validator node on ETH? No, because I used to think that starting a masternode on Dash was
hard.
I don't know what I'm doing. That's hard. But then when you have to start an ETH validator node, you're sending your funds off to a smart contract, a 32 ETH. You're doing blind signing on your hardware wallet, and magically after a week on on the beacon chain, you see Ethereum emerge, and you can't really see the transactions, and that's that's Ethereum, right? That's the second largest coin in the world, and that's also not for humans. You need to really be tech savvy to do it, or trust that the ones that are guiding you have your interest, and got you covered in a good guide. But it's still too difficult and too much black box on what's going on, and it requires
One
some sort of
click.
technical. Yeah,
Needs to be one
that's
click.
and so the whole point is we can build it better on protocol level. We can do, but if we don't have the one click in the wallet, anyways, then why are we doing this? And the one click in the wallet, when Evo, Checkmark, Brian Foster and I would talk together, maybe even Pasta and Quantum, and then figure out how can we, with the quickest possible resolution, build a one-click trustless solution into the native Dash wallets, or at least just one of them, right? That would be something I would wish for. I think not only for the sake of CrowdNode, but for the sake of the community, right?
Absolutely.
I have no interest in running a custodial service. For all practical purposes, I would rather run a non-custodial solution and offer that. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And to Mark Mason's credit, he was talking about one-click staking for a long time. He was and
swipe to stake was actually his way of saying it initially.
And he kind of pushed to get CrowdNode even in the wallet to begin with. And I think it's been one of the best things that's happened. And the staking wars are heating up as far as now. I think it's very easy to one-click stake in a trust minimized way on a lot of protocols. For example, with like the Thorchain and Maya protocol, it's relatively, you hit a thing and it goes into the pool and you earn yield. Yeah. Now, I should say that there is some nuance to that, because the Maya protocol, Thorchain has something, and Maya was going to add it, and now there's a lot of rethinking of it, which is the savers functionality, which allows you to just earn single-sided yield on any asset. So say you put Dash in, 10 Dash in, you get that 10 Dash out plus whatever interest on top of it. There's no volatility between Dash and Cacao or whatever. That was planned. Now it's on hold because of potentially some issues with the long-term security of the protocol, of the Maya protocol or Thorchain already has it. Maya decided to take a pause because what happens if too large of a percentage of the pool ends up being in savers, and then the price of one asset goes down, and eventually you could have an insolvent pool and could have a real problem for the network. And so they're trying to figure out ways of mitigating it and stuff. So it still might happen, but the point is, it's imperative that Dash have native yield, not exogenous from the Maya protocol, which is great too, but native yield and one-click kind of yield. And especially because there's a lot of deadness, I guess, in the Masternode network today, where there's a lot of the same people who ran Masternodes for years are still there, and some people lost their keys, or some people, probably not many, but some people have lost voting interest and things like that. And as I'm sure you see from CrowdNode allowing people to vote on the network, there's high participation in CrowdNode, but not only, again, from what I've seen, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's relatively high. But more importantly, all the CrowdNode nodes do vote, even if all the users don't. And because of the way the quorum, or because of the minimum vote thresholds, a lot of proposals would not pass at all if it weren't for CrowdNode today. And so those votes. And so from a governance perspective, it's very important. Also, I mean, I think so in the ideal world, on a protocol level, or at least a mostly protocol, partially CrowdNode facilitated level, everyone should be able to stake Dash in their mobile wallet and then vote in their mobile wallet. I think that would be awesome.
Yes, and the API is there to do the voting. We just, and by we I mean the mobile team, just didn't implement the voting in the UI yet. So and the integration into the wallet, it works, it's there, but there's so much more that can be done. Well, I fully respect that focus is now on Evo, and as it should be, but after Evo, let's
so much to do.
make it better. Let's finish it. Let's do what's possible to the full extent. I think that would make a lot of sense to do, and would be good for the Dash ecosystem in general. I think the participation is around, depending on the proposal, but I can't remember, 10 to 25% of the Dash under management, you might say, that vote via CrowdNode. And that, I think, that's better than obviously the overall network participation. But it's not significant. It's not, it was better a while back. But I would love to advocate for one thing, though, and if you are an MNO and you're sitting on your voting keys and they're not doing anything, you can always delegate them. Add them to your profile on CrowdNode, and then they would also start to participate in the voting cycle as if it was a masternode that we're running. But that would even bring the participation on a whole network scale up as well. And I think the concept of one Dash, one vote, or the mental democratization of owning a Dash and staking it also gives you a say, is a really strong it's a really strong proposal, a really strong offer.
Yeah, I definitely, and that's another thing, protocol level, there should be some things, in my opinion, fixed about voting. I do like the way the threshold is now. The problem is the potential attack vector of people that just aren't paying attention. So I would probably find a way. Yeah, I would try.
Your fake proposal, the one with the double S, right?
What was that?
There was the desert link with the double S that did
the desert
and
links.
I looked at it and I think there's something wrong here. That's something very
and
wrong.
let me actually pull that up right now on MNO Watch, because man.
While you're opening something, I just want to give you some credit, Joel, because I haven't seen you physically in a while, and I haven't been at a conference with you, but seeing you sort of roam the hallways and the corridors, it's like seeing a true BizDev in his natural habitat.
Thank you.
But it was really a pleasure, and every time you talk to someone, you were like waving and I came over, hey Andreas, have you met? And then it's really, really awesome. I think you're doing a very good job. So thanks for that.
Thank you, and I hope the votes continue to reflect that, and we have a lot of work to do. I mean, it just I feel like I feel sometimes I do feel a sense of anxiety when I fall asleep, because I'm just thinking about what else I have to do the next day, because we're already January, February, March, and April. 4 out of the 12 months are already basically over, and I'm proud of what we've done so far, but there's so much left to do, and I'm like we got to be a full sprint, and I think we've done pretty well. But as you were talking about the voter apathy thing, there was someone made a scam proposal from the desert links and some affiliate bounty thing, and they kind of, to be fair, they kind of scammed. They actually didn't. It wasn't like a complete spam thing, in terms of they put some effort into actually scamming. Like they copied and pasted a lot of the text that I've put in other proposals, and then they modified some things. However, to this day, and it's 10 months remaining or whatever. It's like a 10-month long proposal, or whatever it was. It's insane. But to this day, 110 masternodes have yes votes on that. Still.
And some are even from us, even though,
you just have to
obviously, we just pass it on, right? But it still hurts to see that. What is it? I think 15% of the nodes are voting yes. So most of our members got the message, but there's still 15% that didn't get the message. So that's actually a fake one.
Yeah, and so that's the people who do vote. Imagine the people who don't. So I would like to overhaul the voting system to where maybe it was like current voters, like voters who had voted at least in the last 6 months would count, but not but towards the next vote cycle maybe. So like so that you can't there's got to be a way that prevents gaming that just makes it kind of work out. And so but also before you feel too bad about all that stuff, there's this project on Solana called Slurf. It's a meme coin called Slurf that had a picture of a sloth drooling, just like, and they somehow raised $10 million for this dumb project. And then the person, $10 million for this project. And then the guy, when he was the one guy behind it, when he was going to like mint the tokens, he accidentally burned the whole 10 million. He was like, oh no.
I'm sorry, can we do it again? It was like, no.
And the community's gotten behind this guy. I think they will be able to make investors whole and then some out of just, which is insane. But the point is, if people just like this rando on the internet, they just throw 10 million at him, it makes me feel a lot better about our position, right?
Yeah, it makes me feel sad, honestly, that there's not 10 million going into Dash. But you're right, that should just be water on our mills.
If we wanted to scam people, I think we could figure it out, which, we'll see. But the point is, it's going to be, I think that we could solve all that stuff. And so to add to something else, right? So that's the whole staking element of like, how do we do crowd node? How do we do voting? Just to finish out the voting thing. And I did meet Rango's business partner at ETHDam. Apparently, like, no one knows who Rango is, the one who runs Dash Central. Some people do, but I at least know his part of his name, I guess now. But apparently, his business partner was there, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, he wants to like overhaul the site or something like that, or something." Okay, so at least that should help, because there have been alternative governance portals for Dash. I feel like they were bad, or they were a cash grab at the end of the day. Dash Nexus was okay, but they charged way too much money, and in the end just didn't maintain it very well. Everyone stayed on Dash Central. Now, I think that having multiple governance portals is very good, but it just takes a lot of things. I would like to see, now that it's a one Dash proposal fee especially, I would like to see a way for either Dash Central or a competitor to charge a one Dash proposal submission fee on top of that, which is still very cheap and will be very cheap for a while probably. So you just to sustain the website, and then that also like puts all the data and stuff on there, and to have a way, especially once you have usernames and stuff like that, where commenters have to register, they sign with their Dash wallets or whatever their username, and they upvote and downvote. They upvote comments by paying the money a little bit, and then and obviously there's got to be limitations to how much that, like, might just display these are the top paid ones, or the top paid one goes up, and the site takes a percentage of that to be sustainable, right? To kind of monetize and make this a sustainable business. But beyond those ideas, in my opinion, the biggest idea for this is shout out to the Bitcoin Cash community for something. They fund everything through donations, right? Which you can do it, right? They do have something they called Flipstarter, which is it's like a Bitcoin Cash treasury, but it's a donation-based thing that allows you to create a proposal or whatever, and it's time-based, like a voting window, which the voting is a contribution window. And if you don't hit your goal by the end of that, then everyone gets automatically refunded. And if you do get it, then you just keep the money. And I've been advocating to have this in Dash for a while, because there's a proposal system in the protocol. People don't like, just haven't had the interest. But I would love for there to be, on the proposal page, you have proposals, and you also just have crowd funds. So in case there's no more treasury money, you can crowd fund. But I'd also like to see a practice of even if it's not at the protocol level, at the Dash Central, for example, level, to be where you could where it segregated proposals by ones that got an initial crowdfund first. So when I started Dash Growth, I raised the first month of funding in donations first to sort of prove a point and try to move things in that direction. But so I'd like that to be like where the page shows these are the proposals that raised the first month. And so after you reach a flip starter level of like, say, whatever your budget is for the first month at least, like a matching grant type system, then it auto submits the proposal. And you can also just not do that. You can also just pay one Dash and get your proposal, but that would be shown in a separate category. So it'd sort of be a way of like encouraging like, oh, these are the ones that have momentum behind them. And then these are the ones that just like, if DCG just wants to put a regular proposal in, they don't need to raise money. It's fine. I would like to have all that in the same interface so that all the ideas people want, they can all get funded in the same spot.
Yeah, and we could even put some voting behind it with the new Evo schematics for voting, right? But yeah, I like the idea. I was going to ask you what would be the purpose of it, but with a growing ecosystem, that would be an interesting angle as well. As for the voting, it was a quick fix to just double the treasury in size, right, and move funds from the miners. But I would also love to see a more dynamical solution around if there's no good proposals, could we reallocate something back to the masternode owners, or even back to the miners for that matter, right? Instead of just not minting it. But some sort of a dynamical approach to it, and I'm sure clever people have talked about this, and it's possibly one of the things that could be done after Evo and revisited, right? But
and I have a lot of ideas for that too. But to just say that very quickly about how that might work.
Oh my God, I opened up that one.
Yes, there's a super block right now, and the super block, even though the percentage doubled, it's not double of what it was in 2017 because every 7%ing every year, the total inflation goes down. And eventually this goes to zero, right? Eventually there's no treasury. And it's so what I would like to see is a second treasury introduced with Evo that is just a mechanism for, it's just like a pot of money. And anyone can donate to this pot of money, but only masternode votes can unlock it to pay something out. And so initially we have these two treasuries where you still have the block reward, the super block treasury that everyone's using. But then let's just say we onboard a new like company or like a DApp or something. It's not like a company that can take equity from the diff or whatever. But so in their data contract or smart contract or whatever, it pays like 10% of all revenue that the DApp earns to this address. And so as this company, as this app makes money, it pays into this pot, and then eventually, you can do something.
Back to the treasury, back into new circulation of good ideas.
Or say I do a proposal to fund a legal team to get a bit license approved or whatever. And then for whatever reason, that becomes an impossibility. And so what do I do with the money? Maybe I just throw it into the pot, and then now it's back in control of everyone. And so we have these simultaneous treasuries, and then at some point, maybe the super block just starts to become redirected into this pot every month. And so by doing that, first of all, you have a sustainable thing where when you have fee revenue or whatever, you could even code in maybe 5% of all transaction fees on the network go into this pot or something. You could figure out something like that, or maybe not. But then eventually that's the mechanism by which you can save every month. And you still can. So if you're like, well, let's just not spend because we have no good proposals. But then it's like, guess what? We need to launch Evo and spend a lot. Then we just take a big chunk out of that pot. So that's just an idea off the top of my head.
So a savings account for the treasury funds not spent in a given period.
Yes.
Well, I'm just thinking, let's always remember to try to keep it simple as well, right? But yeah, that's an idea. Definitely.
Yeah. For sure. There's a lot of fun things we could do.
Indeed.
The last thing I wanted to bring up is privacy. And
Yes,
that's because that was the focus of ETHDam, and it's
privacy
the
and security.
the problems that Dash has hit on have been relate in terms of regulators or banking partners and all that kind of stuff. Have been two things. Have been unregistered security, which is a U.S. based idea,
Yeah,
and privacy, which is oddly not a U.S. based idea, but whatever. The thing is with the security thing. First of all, Dash is completely there's no case at all, either open or decided, that says that Dash is a security. And there are two cases, once against Bittrex and one against Coinbase, I think, but not Binance. The SEC's Binance case did not mention Dash for some reason, but that say that Dash was one of the coins that was sold as an illegal security, which is different from being one, right? But the FUD still hits it. And currently, the SEC sent a notice to Consensus, which should not be confused with Consensus, which is the Coinbase event, or CoinDesk event, I should say. And then Consensus is now countersuing the SEC. There's a lot of companies that have open litigation against the SEC right now. So this whole disaster is going to have to just play out. There's nothing Dash can do other than decentralize its structure further and have more different groups involved, which I argue that now that I'm doing biz dev with Marina and biz dev and marketing, that helps to decentralize from just DCG does everything. We could further this, and I'm going to allude to that. But privacy is the big one. First, before I go on my 3-hour rant or whatever, before I go on another rant, do you have any comments on that before I taint your opinion with mine?
Well, too late. Well, no, I do. Well, the whole security discussion is actually, for me, I have to say somewhat absurd. That's probably the wrong way of putting it, but the term security is a US one. We don't really have that in EU. It's not a sort of common a common thing in the EU. Especially one thing interesting about the whole term security, it's not mentioned at all in MiCA. So it's a purely US SEC discussion that's obviously quite relevant to pay attention to, but also somewhat not relevant for EU citizens or for CrowdNode directly. Although we are serving US customers, so possibly it is, right? But that would sort of be my first comment to it. Job, you're welcome to rant on, and I can jump on board.
Yes. Well, so first of all, there are two things that Dash has to consider, and there's actually three things. There's two groupings on the privacy thing. I'm trying to organize my thoughts in mind, but so Dash has to deal with end users / customers, and then has to deal with regulators. And the privacy issue, Dash is getting the worst of everything.
Both worlds. Yeah.
And the worst of both worlds on the one world, two angles, and the worst on the other angle, right? So it's getting the worst of everything. So my thought on all this is we definitely, actually, it might even be getting, there's two worst on one side and two worst on the other side, and we're getting all four of them. So we're in the worst possible situation in regards to the privacy issue. So I think we need to change something. And anything we do will improve our position in some way, probably. Maybe that's a little, superfluous. Maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic.
That's an opinion, definitely, yes.
But not everything we do, but let me just explain that. From the regulatory standpoint, as far as I'm aware, you have three big jurisdictions, and obviously these aren't all jurisdictions, but they're general groupings of how things are treated. So there's the US market, or the US, Canada, Australia kind of market, or maybe Mexico, who knows, that doesn't really care about privacy coins at all, really. They just don't care. Kraken has Monero, for example, in the US, and just they don't in the EU anymore, as far as I know, but they do in the U.S. because no one cares. So that's not a problem from a regular. The securities part was, but we already covered that. Now then, there's Europe, which I'm sure you're very familiar with the whole privacy things and those problems. And so Dash seems to be available in most of Europe, but also some countries have exchanges or payment processors that don't want to list it because they've heard it's a privacy coin. It seems like that's the root cause of this is they've heard is reputation.
They'd
Do
rather
you agree with that?
to steer away from Dash than sort of tackling the issue or actually, look at it and get, into the details of whether if it's, in the category of private and then potentially an issue or not, and therefore not an issue. So someone steer away from whatever might be tainted with privacy, whether if it being reasonable or not.
Yes. And a lot of EU exchanges I've talked to and things like that have no idea that Litecoin's privacy function today is more involved than there's arguments about better or worse or whatever. There's a million different angles, but the point is it does more things. It's a more involved privacy function, and because there's no reputation, they don't care. Now, this is very different in Asia, where especially South Korea, but also Japan, and I don't know about other parts in Asia, but for those markets at least, as soon as Litecoin had this soft forked in Nimble extension block, they delisted Litecoin out of everywhere in South Korea, instantly. Like they do not mess around. So I don't think we can mess with that market for the time being.
But you can also say just because Ethereum has the Fern protocol doesn't mean Ethereum has been delisted yet, right? So we're seeing a movement, and I think obviously the bigger coins that are being that are moving towards privacy, the bigger the issue will be for the exchanges and also the regulators. Would they want to stop the venture capital money that's put into the larger coins and larger projects and take it head on? I'm not sure they will do that in a couple of years. I think privacy will become more normal and not an issue. Just considered something that's there.
They will need some sort of compliance tools for sure.
Exactly, and therefore, to some extent, I would. Part of me thinks that maybe we should just, in the Dash community, sit on our hands, and the problem will go away. But that's also, then we will probably not be the best privacy coin out there, right? And that's also a shame.
Yes, and that goes to the user side of things.
Exactly, right. So it's a dilemma. I can see why you're putting items in both columns.
Well, let me actually explain. So on the two pillars of the one category that are both bad. So first of all, Dash has the reputation as a privacy coin. And I feel like something that's really hit us hard on the user side, which I'll get to later, is the whole Brian Taylor, whoever it was at the time, posting publicly saying Dash is not a privacy coin. Because now that's just like, well, why do we keep you around then? Get out of here. We don't like you. Like, there's been a lot of that on that side. But also, it doesn't seem to have worked out because there's, first of all, the reputation. And in order to change the reputation, you have to talk to every single person or every single entity that believes that from the past. And Dash does not get attention to that degree. No visibility. But also, there is documentation. There's code, there's all this stuff that provides for the enhancement of privacy for the end user of Dash. And even if you argue, well, you can do this kind of stuff in Bitcoin too, it's not protocol level with Bitcoin. And it's like you can't, it's too weird of an argument. So if you talk to if you say, I go to BitVow and say, hey, list Dash, and they go to their regulator in the Netherlands and they say, hey, we'd like to list Dash. They're like, isn't that a privacy coin? And they're like, well, you see, like there's just it's terrible. So the reputation, I do not think we'll ever be able to shake that reputation. We have to rise past it, Yeah. But then
educate people around it.
The other side of it is we don't make it easy for exchanges because first of all, the privacy functionality, if you look at it, it looks, and I get into this on the user side also, it looks very laundery as far as you have money and then you break it up and mix it with other people and all this stuff. It just looks, when you're explaining how it works, it looks suspicious, just the way, because you're doing all this stuff to hide, it's like, it looks like a magic trick. Remember the magic show? Hey, there, put the card in here. It looks like you're trying to... Yeah, that guy was good.
The at the conference was really cool, yeah.
Yes, but it looks like you're trying to hide something rather than... It looks just the way it works. But also, if you have a Dash deposit address at an exchange, there is no way you can technically prevent a CoinJoin transaction from being sent to that address. Yeah. And that is a big problem for exchanges because they might not be able to prove origin of funds, or they have to then say, hey, person, you cannot deposit Dash unless you have include a refund address, because we might have to be able to, and then that's just overhead. They don't want to deal with that. So what we, in my opinion, need to do is find a way for it to be simple to where they can always comply with the regulators, where the regulators can say, look, Dash has some privacy functions, but we can always prove there's no laundering, because we can always say our KYC'd customer deposited our funds. Where did they come from? From this address, and he signed according to the with the AOPP or whatever. He signed that he proves he owns this address. This is his funds. It goes to the exchange, and it's just super simple. And we cannot provide that technically today, and I think that's a problem.
Well, we cannot provide that technically on a protocol level, right? A mixed input address. We could possibly build an address. Maybe it shouldn't start with an X or a 7, but let's think of something, right? And then have that on protocol level. But the idea, I think, is great. Why do I think it's great? Because it's basically what we've been doing for years, right? When you send funds to us, you send it from your address, designated address. It's yours. The inputs when you deposit are coming from your address. And if we do sort of apply that same governance for exchanges, so instead of random addresses going into your designated receiver address on the exchange end, it's more important that it's actually coming from an address that you've signed or proven ownership over. And that would potentially resolve the privacy concerns that any centralized service or exchange would have. I think we have the capability to do that today, but we don't have the capability to enforce that today, obviously, protocol level. But I think it's a very valid idea that could possibly make it much easier to understand, perceive, and manage regulatorily wise for exchanges. So
yeah, and there is precedent behind this, because there's a bunch of different cryptocurrencies out there, and one of the reasons why Monero is having regulatory issues is because they do not have a function that could do that. So if I send Monero to an exchange, they say where it come from, they can't prove where it came from. The only way I could do that would be again, this is my understanding. I have not gone super deep into the technical things. So if a Monero person in the chat's like, no, that's not true, we have this, okay, please feel free to correct me. I would love to be correct on the issue. But from my understanding, you would have to supply the exchange with your view key, which then the exchange could see your entire transaction history. And no one's going to do that, especially not a privacy conscious person. So the only way you could do that is have a completely separate wallet that then maybe you send to and then give the view key. But it's like complicated, and exchanges don't know how to do that. Now Firo, which is as far as I know, a code fork of Dash, because they do have master nodes, they do have LLM queues, they do have instant send, all this stuff, but also zero knowledge privacy, similar to Zcash, but a different setup. And Ruben, who I'm good friends with, was a Dash community member back in the day, and then he he jumped to Zcoin, as it was called before Firo, because he didn't like the de-emphasis on privacy that started to happen around the Ryan Taylor era. So anyway, they figured out the exchange address thing, which they have an address format that will not accept funds technically from a shielded source. You have to go from transparent. So it satisfies those requirements. And from what I've been told, and I'm pretty sure this is public info. I don't, it's not a secret, right? Binance has delisted Firo in a few European countries, at least as of right now. They're implementing the exchange address thing over the summer and will relist Firo there. And so as far as the wait and see what happens, we know what to look for, because we'll see if Firo is able to get relisted in these countries, which by the way might be countries that Dash is delisted in. If Firo with significantly more advanced privacy than Dash, let's be honest, more advanced than Monero as well, which they're going to be very upset, but this is not a Monero podcast for a reason. But so if they can get listed in better places than Dash, then we have the blueprint for relistings. We won't get into Asia or a lot of Asian countries, I should specify, until there's some significant social and political changes around this issue of cryptocurrency that we can't fix. And we can't, unless we literally gut privacy from the protocol, but that would be disastrous. But also do that plus spend millions on a PR campaign to let the world know that. So it'd be a big problem. So that seems to be the way forward from the regulatory standpoint. There's a few different technical ways we could do this. On the other hand, so Dash is the worst of both worlds. It's privacy and doesn't have this exchange address thing. But also from the regulatory standpoint, this hits more in the US, but also apparently in Europe. All the people who've gotten, as far as I know, no protocol level developers, like no Zcash developers, no Firo developers, no Monero developers, none of them have ever been arrested for their work, as far as I know. Now that, on the other hand, there have been very many mixers, third-party mixers that have been arrested and shut down, especially in the US, but possibly in other countries. I have not done my research entirely on this.
Well, you mentioned Tornado Cash in the Netherlands, right? On the get-go.
Well, yeah, that's where it gets a little murkier.
Yeah.
But so that's, first of all, that's one of my arguments against exceptional privacy, as Amir Taki would have phrased it, where privacy is not normal. It's an exceptional thing, where it's a third party service that does it, because then they become under intense scrutiny from regulators and from law enforcement for facilitating criminal activity, where the whole protocol can't do that. But if they're doing this, it becomes a lot harder to avoid. And also from the criminal activity type perspective, it's, so not only do they have that like risk of, whatever, but then you have the user experience thing where it's like, well, only users of this can have privacy. Therefore, on the whole, it's a lot easier to sort of segregate and go after people. And so I would, rather than just see, certain core developers decide to branch off and do the privacy, Dash removes privacy from the main protocol, but there's some services on top. That's going in a bad way. Not only as an external privacy thing, but also specifically the mixer. They hate mixers. Anything that money goes in and it gets tumbled around and all this stuff, that looks like laundering too. And so even though Dash's privacy function isn't as advanced as these others, it looks more suspicious. So it's like every worst possible thing from the regulatory standpoint, it seems like we're hitting.
True. I agree. But I do love the fact that we are seeing it more natively also, when we roll out usernames full blown and you're able to exchange friendships, and the built-in mixing part of making that happen. I think that's good, and we should possibly do that even more natively on the protocol level without annoying the users with having to actively turn on CoinJoin or something in advance. I think we'd be better off just not bothering users about it, but just helping them to have it more private by default.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wherever possible. And and then I don't think moving it to a third-party service would solve anything. More or less, make it even more suspicious. I did actually enjoy the attempted PR stunt by Ryan Taylor back in the days, saying we're not Dash is not a privacy coin. I think that it had some very valid points to it, at least comparing to zero knowledge privacy, Zcash, Monero. The simple coin join is seen in many other places, and some might even argue it's not good. Although I think it's not bad either. Honestly,
Definitely better than nothing.
yeah, exactly right. It creates the obfuscation. I'd think some services would claim that they can probably figure out by spending a lot of computational power on where things came from and where they went end of day. But why spend that computational power on figuring that out? Probably they can't even. But yeah, I think CoinJoin is better than nothing. It gives sort of the well, to some extent fungibility aspect of spending your crypto, but let's make it easy. Let's make it the UX. Let's make it more native and intuitive to use.
Absolutely. And that kind of hits that part of things. Last thing that popped into my head about the regulatory side of these things. Zcash is very well entrenched in the U.S. regulatory markets. In fact, Zcash is a New York Department of Financial Services green listed asset, and has been. That's why Gemini, probably the most regulated exchange on the entire planet, supports not only Zcash but also even shielded Zcash. And so it's been a major regulatory hurdle trying to get BitLicense approved in New York because of so many financial, like BitPay, for example, and a bunch. Flexa is another one that's kind of like held up by that they want to integrate. There's so many that are just held up by this one thing, and I've been pursuing it. However, if I want to get a conversation going, you have to make the team available for question and answers to the regulators. Yeah. And I'm more than happy to get that arranged, but I think it would be so much better to be like, hey, remember Zcash? Yeah, us too. And they're just like, oh, okay. And you're through. I would love to be able to just save lawyer fees. Not you need a lawyer, obviously, but we'd be able to save a lot of things in order to just go that way. And so that's that last point on the regulatory thing is like, I think that because projects like Zcash have done the heavy lifting to make the highest levels of privacy legally not problematic, I think we should just copy their homework, sort of, and find a way to do that.
In the US, at least.
Yes. And obviously, Firo is doing the work elsewhere. Now, as far as the privacy on the user experience side, I've been using CoinJoin for many years. And for fewer years, I've used Monero and Zcash, shielded Zcash, and I've used some Mimblewimble stuff for Beam, not yet on Litecoin. I just played around with the tech. The thing is, if you have pre-mixed funds, the Dash experience is the best because you just send and it's done. Yeah. Perfect. The problem is the mixing. I have mixed overnight for my balance. Usually that's what I do, is I just set it to mix, go to bed, wake up in the morning, and then I can spend. Because if you have to actually mix in real time, especially if you want a decent degree of privacy, it's at many hours.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're dealing with this right now because it's being integrated into the mobile wallets as we speak. And the mobile user experience is so much more tricky. And if someone's like, I want to buy a coffee, and then they have to wait 12 hours to mix or whatever, that's just not going to work. So the way and Brian's doing a fantastic job, Brian and Hash and the whole product team of DCG is doing a fantastic job making a smooth user experience. We set a thing and it just does it. And even then you're making these UX sleights of hands to make it look like, again, pick a card, like all that kind of magic stuff. Yeah, you're having to do magic tricks to hide how horrible the user experience is. That's kind of the reality. There's a few options on the table here. I mean, obviously, so Pasta has a few ideas in particular about, for example, if confidential transactions were enabled for Dash to where now you could, you wouldn't, it would hide amounts from addresses. So if I sent to an address, you'd see that the money went to an address, you wouldn't see how much went there or how much is in there. If you added that, you could immensely simplify mixing to where you don't have to break up into denominations and don't have to mix all those denominations. You could just mix your whole balance. And so mixing would probably be like 20 times faster, which is fantastic. It also is not instant. It's still, there would still be a way where I send you money and you're like, all right, great, I want to buy coffee with it. And you have to wait a little bit for there to be privacy. And so the Dash way is instant. Everything's instant, fast, just works. And that's why personally I'm starting to lean in the direction of implementing some kind of a zero knowledge thing, such as what Firo has that works with instant send. Zcash does not because they don't have instant send. But Firo's, I think a shielded Firo instant send transaction is like a 4 second, something like that. It's not 2 seconds or 1 second, but it's like 4. And that seems like the best of everything. And from a user perspective, that's like privacy is great. I like the user experience of privacy. That's more important than having the absolute best privacy in the world, although I like that too.
But is it the 4 second delay in terms of achieving privacy on Firo? Is it good privacy? Because if you send 10 dash into mixing and you get 10 dash back after 4 seconds, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that's probably the same person doing it, right? So the fact that there is a routine behind it and it takes time helps to obfuscate and make the privacy even better, right? Isn't there a paradox there, or am I missing something?
There might be if you go in and out of a pool. And this is what XKCD was trying out when he tested out Litecoin's Mimblewimble, that if you move it into the MWeb.
I love the Mimblewimble name.
Yes. And then you move it out, it's very easy to see. The thing is, when you have a zero knowledge shielded pool, like if all my funds are shielded, like I move to shielded and I send to another shielded user instantly, it's like 4 seconds, 4 seconds. They don't see it. There's no data leakage. There's no address, there's no anything. And so people can keep transacting within the shielded pool and it's all dark. It's all, hidden. And it's only when you exit that then would show. But then so if you need to, for example, pay to an exchange and you want privacy and you have transparent, let's say Masternode rewards or something, you probably move them to shielded pool, wait maybe a day or two to be super careful, or a few hours or whatever, just so that when it goes to the exchange, people observing the blockchain would not necessarily, it could be another Masternode holder with a similar amount. It could be another amount. You don't know. Yeah. And so that's the only time when it gets a little bit more complicated.
Got it.
So, and the other thing is just level of privacy, having something that's just super, and also data bloat. Because when you have a million mixing transactions flying around, that makes the blockchain bigger. Obviously, encrypted transactions are more data intensive than regular ones, but I think it's still less than if you went through a bunch of coin join rounds.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm hoping we go. And I don't want to go nowhere. If Pasta's solution, or what, I don't want to put his name on, he just talked about some things that are possible. Postable. They're a little bit postable. Those things that's good. Anyway.
But do we really want, once with the one Evo thing is answered, hopefully June, right? That's what we're hearing right now, or over the summer at least. Do we really want DCT to start on a sort of enhancement to privacy endeavor, or a better protocol level staking endeavor, or do we want dApps to be built on winning use cases, or the team going on conferences and spreading the lovely word that now we actually have Evo out, and much like you did this day of work as a wonderful person in your natural habitat, send out Pasta or Sam or whomever from Brian and etc. everyone out to conferences and have them show their faces and be proud of what's built. And what I was fascinating about what I'm trying to say, I think, is Was it around 60,000 euros in awards that was going into the hackathons? Like in a lot of money, doing a hackathon dash conference where it doesn't have to be on the Dash blockchain, but obviously we would encourage that hackers build on the Dash blockchain, Evo, of course, and build some dApps that can actually possibly create that winning use case that would drive some adoption. And then afterwards, we start solving, enhanced privacy or protocol level staking and whatnot. But what's the chicken and the egg here? Like,
well, here's an interesting thought on all that, because that's very important point. Right now, Dash Core Group, which is the primary development arm of Dash, is segregated into two teams. There's the platform team and the core team.
Yes, core team.
And a lot of the stuff we're talking about with like trustless staking and all that is core team. And core has been a lot of core manpower, or whatever you want to call it these days, has been focused on assisting the platform team. So they're not just doing their own tasks. It's like all hands on deck, fix platform. So after release, obviously there's going to be a little bit more of a core focus on core things. Platforms just continually improving platform because there's so much to do. However, there does not need to be just Dash Core Group. There could be external or other, I don't even call it external, but decentralize the development of Dash. And the interesting thing about this is, first of all, if we can find money to fund an external team that just works on, for example, a privacy overhaul, first of all, that allows us to not have to wait for DCG to do everything, which has been a big problem in Dash's past, but also has been a problem when the SEC, when they're talking in their suits to Binance, for example, mentioned that Dash Core Group received the majority of the treasury funding as an argument for, as talking about security, even though they didn't allege it was a security. It's very dishonest, but whatever. It's still a point. And the other thing is, a lot of DCG is a US-based company right now. And it might not always be, who knows, but a lot of the developers are also, or a lot of the employees are also in the US. And there's always concern that would cause potential issues, like they're scared of working on privacy because of what would happen.
Yeah, okay.
Now, what if we could completely ban DCG from working on privacy and make an outside of the US entirely team work on it? Now we don't have those same problems to where the DCG devs don't worry about being, accosted.
DFO that is just focusing on privacy, that's running in arm's length of everyone else, but still contributing, obviously, on GitHub.
And I have some people in mind already. I'll just say
I figured.
Yeah, I'm always running around.
Yeah.
So that's just something to think about. And we just hit the 2-hour mark, by the way, on this.
Wow.
And I'm sorry for keeping you up very late.
No,
Do you
that's
have
okay.
any other thoughts you want to give on this whole thing?
That's
not the privacy thing specifically, just any other thoughts that you've been thinking of that you want to get out there?
I think we covered a lot of ground here. I really want to, what's the word here? Beat the drums for maybe getting a Dash conference again. Set up a Dash conference, meeting each other physically, like Sven said, like that has something valuable in itself. It adds value to just be able to look at each other and talk and maybe drink a beer and socialize and sort of get the community feeling again, making it stronger, unifying on a common goal, or I think that really sparked my joy to see you and see Sven and see other people and see Dash in a new perspective. You mentioned, get out of the bubble and then look at the bubble, the echo chamber, get out of it just to get perspective. And I think that's very healthy for everyone to do once in a while.
Absolutely.
And I really enjoyed it. And it was an eye opener. seeing the potential that or feeling the potential that Dash actually has. I think a lot of bad vibes and then Evo was sort of mitigated, at least for me, going outside the bubble for just a moment. And I think we can do so much by just being present at conferences. And I loved that when we hung out and we had the Dash merch on. It was oh, that's the Dash guys. They're always so nice. I really enjoyed that. There was a good vibe to it. And I think we should do that more. And we could even do it just for specifically for a Dash convention or Dash conference or something where we get together and talk about all these things, talk about what to do next, because there's obviously more ideas than time and or money. So we sort of need to gauge the priorities, and I think that's bestly done by also having fun and enjoying each other's company.
Yes, I would 100% agree. And just over, I mean, obviously ETHDam was the start. I'm going to Web3 Dubai, and over the course of this, and then I'm going to Consensus. I don't think I'm speaking at Consensus, but I'm going. And then I'm going to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is a local New Hampshire thing. There'll be some people like Paul from Edge is going to be there, for example, and some others. Also, at some point, I'm going to, I think I'm going to be speaking at the Litecoin Summit, and that's July. And there's a possibility the Maya folks keep trying to get me to go to Rare Evo in Vegas in August, and I can't commit to that yet, but I'm trying to. But just over the travels the future travels that I've planned, I'm going to meet up with Brian Foster, of course, which I've never met with him before, even though, and then also Fabio, if you remember Fabio, I'm going to run into him, and as well as Moritz. I don't know if you remember Moritz from.
I do.
And so at least those people from the Dash greater world. And so I do think we need to have a conference. It has to be after Evo.
Yeah.
Maybe towards the end of the year, maybe early next year, a dedicated conference. My dream would be to have a conference of some kind for Dash in who knows where. Would it be Asia? Would it be Dubai? Would it be, wherever makes sense.
Yeah.
And at some point this year, maybe, and then come in full force for ETHDam or CryptoDam 2025 and have a hackathon for Evo. Like have Evo people come and build on Evo at ETHDam for the hackathon. That's my dream. I think we can do it.
And a specific, pot or price for building on Evo, much like some of the sponsors had, the platinum, or I don't know how they called it, right? They had specific pots of awards, 10K in euro for building on their L2 or something, right? So something specifically targeted for hacking or building on Evo, building dApps would make sense. Set aside a pot of money for that through the treasury or something.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good idea. Get the power back.
Yes,
the energy back in everything.
And the other thing about conference stuff, obviously, if I'm traveling to all these conferences, that's one part of it. The other part of it, though, is if we host our own conference, we can make it free for the treasury if we do things right. Because good thing is I've hosted some events before, and I am close to the ETHDam team. And let's be honest about them. They, you were there. You see how much money they spend. Like
yes.
The food, the top quality food, the espresso carts, the magician, of course, the drinks. And then even on the last day, I was out till Ellie was out with everyone until 2 a.m, which she should not have been, whatever. She's
pregnancy, yeah.
Yeah, but even at it was 12 of us left at a bar there, and she was almost sliding across the bar to stop people for paying for their own drinks. No, I got it, we got it, and stuff. And the point is if they manage to turn a profit doing this because they sell tickets and they have sponsorships. And I have some inside information about, numbers on all of this, for example.
Yes.
If they're able to do that, we can do that as well as provide vendors for food. And these are, instead of included in the ticket price, just do vendors and make them take Dash and things like that. So we can make a for-profit conference. And not even it doesn't cost a lot, but like a for-profit conference. And if we do enough of these and get enough partners, ecosystem partners, to come in and sponsor and make a big enough event and advertise, maybe this can be like even a side income for future biz dev and other things. I'm just saying, like, we can do things better than we've done them before. Lest we forget, the Dash convention was not really, for the most part, not treasury funded, as far as I know. It got, sponsorships and things. I don't remember if they sold tickets or not, but they had sponsorships at least from a lot of companies, and so we could do the same. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. I'm hearing you. And you're the guy to do it, I suppose.
Maybe I need
one of the candidates at least.
I need to hire a lot of help, but let's hope the Dash price goes up, or let's hope that people keep clicking that Bitrefill referral link I keep on shilling all over Twitter. Click it a lot until we have a big budget. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I don't have any sort of rounding up comments. I think it was a great conference. I really enjoyed some of the debates, especially the ones around scaling. Those were fun.
I enjoyed it slightly less than you.
Yeah, you moderated it. I have a wonderful picture of you sort of being completely shut out of the whole conversation, right? But you did well, and you also, the joke aside, managed to say that is a Bitcoin ETF just an L2 for Bitcoin, right? That was an interesting angle to it, but quite fun as well. So overall, just let's do it more.
Absolutely.
We
should definitely do that. I definitely. Another thing that came up, other than the scaling solution joke, that Karen of Railgun, Kai, the developer, he shared on Twitter at some point. Apparently, I said this, and I had forgotten about it until he posted it. But about people complaining about the speculative part of the space. Apparently, this is what people tell me that I said. Apparently, I said that we're being outcompeted by a dog with a hat.
Yeah, you said that.
Like, we can do better. Like, it's our responsibility to do better. And so there's so much. Listen, there's some culture that happened in Dash. Maybe it's just when people realized they could put 1,000 Dash into a master and vote and get income, that they thought that was all they had to do. And DCG had a culture of just saying, we're working on things, go away, kind of, not very communicative, not very collaborative for a while. It's different today, I think. But maybe the Dash community there's just a lot of whiners, so many complainers. Someone just, the price isn't good, or whatever, and just sitting around and like, listen, if we're being outcompeted by a dog with a hat, maybe we need a Dash with a hat, yes, but also we can do better. We can win. We can study how to win and then execute how to win. And I think it's just so much work. Think about all the work that went into the Lightning Network and all the ecosystem and everything. And they're hitting so many problems because the foundation was not good. And just think of all that capital, all that talent, all that enthusiasm, all that stuff. If we should be able to sell those people on Dash. Maybe not those exact same people, but similar people. Tell them Dash can be this that will not let you down. You can grow.
Pull someone out of their other bubbles and into our Dash bubble.
Yeah, and join their bubbles. Why can't it be cross-bubble? Why can't I go to every single crypto conference in the world and say, you guys need to integrate Dash usernames for your Monero wallet?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that? Why can't we have a business agreement with Cake Wallet, the Monero mostly, but other wallet, Edge Wallet? Why can't we go to the Zashi Zcash wallet and be like, look, Zcash is coming to the Maya protocol at some point this year. And so why can't they just have a built-in Maya swap where for a little bit of Zcash, it swaps for the Dash credits to your username and the user doesn't even see it? Why can't we have it all? Why can't Dash be, even if, let's just say the Dash money thing never works out for whatever reason, but what if Dash is the username and identity system that the entire crypto ecosystem runs on? That's a great victory. But we need
Yes.
victories, is the point. Get
We
some
need
victories.
victories, winning use cases, right? That's what I keep getting back to.
Yes.
But the potential is definitely there, and we need to get Evo out there, and we need to start building on Evo and building those
Absolutely.
use cases,
So-
and then cross the other bridges afterwards, I think.
So the summary of this entire thing then is when Evo.
Oh my God!
It all
Are
comes
we
back to it.
actually adding to that? No.
Maybe we are.
Yeah,
All right,
soon.
This seems like a good place to wrap it up. Thanks you very much for being on. This has been a fun
thank you too.
podcast. Everyone watching, make sure you share it out too. There was a lot of big, important conversations that were had, especially around the staking and the privacy issue that I think we need to start. We've sort of had a little bit in private in certain channels that I think we need to expand to the ecosystem now. So, yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Thanks, Sven, even though he
Yeah.
apparently has more of a life than we do, so he's got to do something. But
I hope no.
yes, and I'll see you guys a lot of you in person at some point. So thanks everyone for watching. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.